There's a lot more to a forest than trees, and we're not just talking about the animals that live inside them. A forest is a great place to hide anything, and also a place you're unlikely to find anything again if you lose it there and can't remember where you left it. Some absolutely astonishing things have been found in the forests over the years, including the incredibly valuable woodland discoveries you're about to see in this video. They used to say that every woman dreams of being given a beautiful diamond. For a woman from Colorado in September 2018, that dream came true. But it wasn't given to her by a romantic partner. It was delivered to her by nature and good fortune. The 71-year-old had gone to the Crater of Diamonds State Park in Arkansas in the hope of finding a precious stone. But she never in her wildest dreams expected to happen upon her eventual discovery, a 2.63 carat diamond that could change her life. It was found between the park's North Wash Pavilion and East Drain areas and is thought to have been the single largest diamond discovered there during 2018. Understandably, the woman has chosen to stay anonymous because she doesn't want her diamond to draw the attention of thieves. But she told reporters that the diamond was so clear she initially thought it was a clear piece of glass. She was delighted to be told that it wasn't, and her discovery might be worth up to $50,000. For many Americans, graduating from school was a momentous occasion that was marked by the giving out of a ceremonial class ring. The rings are often treasured possessions of their owners, and so it can be very upsetting when they go missing. When a woman lost her class ring in Maine in 1973, she assumed she was never going to see it again. She was therefore shocked to her very core when it was eventually found buried in a forest in Finland in February 2020. Deborah McKenna said the ring originally belonged to her boyfriend Sean, but he gave it to her when he moved away from college. She took it off when she washed her hands in a department store in Portland, and it wasn't there after she dried her hands. She assumed it was stolen. How it came to be in a forest in Europe more than 40 years later is a mystery that nobody will ever get to the bottom of. But Deborah is just glad to have it back. She eventually married Sean, but he passed away in 2017, and she's taken the finding of the ring as a sign that he's still watching over her. Here's another ring that was found in a forest. And because the forest in question is Sherwood Forest in Nottingham, England, some people believe that it might be connected to the legend of Robin Hood. Mark Thompson, who paints forklift trucks for a living during the week but goes out looking for treasure with his metal detector on weekends, found the ring in December 2016. He'd only been in the forest for 20 minutes at the time, so this is an extremely lucky find. The golden ring has an engraving of Christ on one side and a female figure on the other, and is thought to have been made in the 14th century. It's topped off with a beautiful blue sapphire. A similar ring design can be seen set into the tomb of William Whittlesley, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, who passed away in 1374. Experts believe that it could be worth as much as $70,000. That's well over 100 years too late to be connected to the tale of Robin Hood, but it doesn't stop people dreaming. In August 2018, contractor David Mount was hired to clear out and demolish an old property in North Carolina. The property was considered to be abandoned, and so anything found within it was free for the taking if Mount wanted it. Whoever made that decision had made a big mistake by not checking the property first. They'd effectively handed him ownership of a treasure trove of pre-war cars hiding inside the building. Inside the partially collapsed basement garage, he found a battered but still intact 1933 Plymouth Roadster, still with all of its original fixtures and features, and that was just the start of the story. He also found a 1939 Chevy Master Deluxe sedan, a seemingly experimental roadster built around the 1930s Ford chassis, and 7 more cars in various states of degradation and decay. So far, he's chosen not to sell any of the cars in hopes that the Plymouth Roadster can be refurbished and repaired so his daughter can drive it. To the right collector, the whole set of cars could be worth well over $100,000. 2 German treasure hunters went out into the forest near the town of Ellwangen in 2017. looking for military relics and ammunition. They didn't find what they were looking for, but they did find something much more valuable. Hidden away among the trees and foliage was one of the largest collections of 14th century coins ever discovered in the country. The bulk of the coins were silver hellers, commonly used all over medieval Europe during the 1300s. Most of them were minted in Schwabisch Hall, but others had come from as far afield as France. Along with the coins was a silver ring, suggesting that this was a personal treasure collection that the owner, for reasons unknown, never came back for after burying. Because of all their years in the ground, many of the coins had stuck together, but once they were separated, it became clear that there was enough currency there for their original owner to have bought a whole farmstead during their era, if they desired to do so. Initially, the treasure hunters hid their lucky find from the authorities, but they eventually changed their minds and reported the discovery. The coins are now on public display. Staying in Germany for a moment, there's a whole car graveyard hiding in the country's Neanderthal Valley, and it was put there on purpose by an eccentric millionaire. Former racing driver Michael Froelich has put together a collection of 50 classic cars and then deliberately half-buried them in mud, crashed them into trees, and positioned them on cliff edges on the land close to his home in Dusseldorf. In among the collection are a Jaguar XK120, a Porsche 356, and a Buick, but the most bizarre vehicle there is a British Rolls-Royce, with a replica mannequin of Queen Elizabeth II of England sat at the wheel. Michael made a lot of money on the racetrack during his career, and so if this is how he wants to spend his money, who are we to tell him that he's wrong? Taken all together, the collection is estimated to be worth around $1 million. He's never shown any interest in selling them, though. To Michael, the whole site is one big modern art exhibition. Michael's Rolls-Royce isn't the only classic British car that was left to rot away in the woods for decades. In Massachusetts, USA, the owner of an Aston Martin DB4 left his broken-down old vehicle parked on woodland outside his home for more than 40 years. Even after all that time, and with all the decay the car suffered during its time in hiding, it still sold for more than $450,000 when it was eventually recovered and made available to buyers in early 2017. Back when Aston Martin released the DB4 in 1958, it was the first mass-produced car in the world capable of going from 0 to 100 miles per hour in less than 30 seconds. But this lonely specimen hadn't had the opportunity to show off its speed for a very long time. The Massachusetts vehicle rolled off the production line in the UK in 1960 and was registered in the USA 1 year later. As a condition of its sale, the new owner had to undertake to carry out a full restoration of the 55-year-old car. So presumably, it's now back on the road somewhere and looking its best for the first time in generations. Standing abandoned and alone in the forests of Singapore is a mansion that once played host to royalty and aristocrats. This is Astana Wood in York, better known to locals as Astana Wood, thanks to mispronunciation. The land that it stands upon was bought by an Englishman named John Dill Ross during the 18th century, who wanted to build himself a home close to the beautiful Singapore Botanic Gardens. As soon as his mansion was complete, he moved in and stayed there for 6 decades, finally selling up in 1857 to a man named Abu Bakr ibn al-Marum Tun Temengnung Raja Daing Ibrahim, better known by the shorter title of the 21st Sultan of Johor, for the rest of the 19th century. The property was expanded and modernized to the point where it had all the opulence of a palace. The Sultan's son then inherited the building in 1904. During his ownership, the palace suffered a terrible fire in 1925, but by 1935, he'd had it fully restored. Then the Second World War came, and the Sultan allowed the property to be used as a military camp and hospital. It was never the same after that, and although formal abandonment didn't occur until 2004, in reality the once glorious palace has been empty since 1957. Back in 1792, Irish politician George Moore wanted to build himself a home suited to a man of his social status. That home was Moor Hall in the forests of Ireland's County Mayo. For more than a century, it became the home of Moore and his descendants, who lived in the mansion in comfort and luxury until civil war came to Ireland during the early 20th century. One night in February 1923, George Moore, a direct descendant of the original George Moore, was sat at home working on a novel when there was a knock on the door. It was the pro-Republican paramilitary group, the IRA, and they wanted his keys. George's brother, Colonel Maurice Moore, was a senator with anti-IRA views, and the group was out for revenge. George had to hand over the keys to save his own life, and the beautiful property was set on fire. Moor Hall was too badly damaged to be saved, and in the 97 years since, the surrounding forest has set about the task of reclaiming the land. It may soon be restored, though. Mayo Council announced plans to rebuild the property and turn it into a tourist attraction in October 2019. When you think of great American rock bands from the past 50 years, they don't come much bigger than Aerosmith. Even Aerosmith was a small touring band once, though, and while they were still busy making their name, they traveled around the United States of America on a small, battered tour bus. In August 2018, it turned out that the tour bus has been parked in the woods in Massachusetts since the 1970s. Getting the full band and all their gear in the back of this 1964 International Harvester Metro must have been a squeeze. But that's all part of the fun when you're a young band on the road together for the first time. The van was parked on private land, and the owner of the connected property said it was already there when he bought the property in the 1980s. He just never realized that it was significant and didn't get around to doing anything with it. When documentary makers from the History Channel finally found it in 2018, they contacted original Aerosmith member Ray Tabano to verify the finding, and he confirmed it really was the same van he'd traveled and slept in all those decades ago. Not everything valuable you might find in the forest is something you can pick up, take home, and make a fortune from selling yourself. In some cases, the right thing to do is to call the police and let the authorities do their work. That's what happened when suitcases containing 186 pounds of meth were found in Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest in Washington State, USA in June 2019. It's long been suspected that illegal narcotics trafficking operations go on within the forests there, and the finding would appear to confirm that suspicion. The street value of all the meth contained in the suitcases is likely to be a little more than $1 million, but nobody will be making any money from it now. The police packed it all away and confiscated it, and are still looking for the people who put it there in the first place. We suspect that this was a very costly loss for whoever planted the suitcases. But then, as the old saying goes, crime never pays. We're not sure whether the supercar that was found in the forest close to St. Petersburg in Russia was left there because it was involved in criminal enterprises or not. But if it wasn't, we have to wonder who someone would deliberately abandon such a valuable car is. It's a Honda NSX, and when it was abandoned, it was still in pretty good condition. For reasons unknown, after the car was parked, the engine was removed, and the vehicle was simply left to gather moss for several years. This particular Honda model was produced between 1990 and 2005, and was the first ever car to have an all-aluminum bodywork, suspension, and chassis. Back when the engine was still in the car, it would have been capable of accelerating from 0 to 100 miles per hour in 5.9 seconds. That's even faster than a Ferrari 348. The vehicle still had its license plates attached, so presumably the authorities wouldn't have had a hard time tracing the owner. It's just a question of whether the owner actually wanted to be found. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.